Okay, let's go. Gavin from Balls to You, and in this week's video we're going to be discussing and talking about how I set up a quarantine rack. But before we get into that, guys, if you wouldn't mind hitting that subscribe button, hitting that notification bell and giving me a thumbs up, I really do appreciate it. If you're not following me already on Instagram, please get over there and give me a follow. Also, if you would wish to learn more and have a bit more in-depth knowledge, my Patreon platform is growing and growing day by day. I'm absolutely loving the platform and loving the people who have joined. There is some exclusive information on there and you guys get access to some exclusive deals. So if you want to give that a try, give it a try. Like I said, there is plenty of information on there which will help you move forward with your keeping and breeding ball pythons. So without further ado, let's get into this week's video. This week's video I wanted to touch on was setting up a quarantine rack. We all know roughly quarantine is important and we all roughly know how to quarantine, but there's different ways. And what you haven't seen or what you won't find on YouTube is how to set up a quarantine rack in general. Now, with going through quarantine, like I said, and the quarantine rack sort of come hand in hand. So I'm going to talk a little bit about quarantine, how I do things. First and foremost, I'll be brutally honest with you because you guys know I'm as transparent as I possibly can be. I don't always quarantine, and what I mean by that is if I've got a couple of good friends, 2 or 3 good friends, that I don't quarantine their animals. And the reason for that is because if they had an issue, they tell me. Simple. And what you will get is sometimes you will get breeders that say everything is all okay, but really it's not. They're behind the scenes, they're having issues with mites or with an RI, stuff like that. So 2 or 3 of my good friends, I do not quarantine their animals. I check them over, make sure they're all okay, then I'll go from there. Don't get me wrong, if there's an issue, then I'll deal with it. But, you know, I'm being honest with you, there are breeders out there, a lot of breeders out there who will exchange snakes between friends who don't quarantine. And that's fine. You know, at the end of the day, it's your collection, it is entirely up to you. However, that's the circle I work within. So that circle is pretty much a trust circle, and if there's an issue, those guys would tell me, and if I had an issue, I would tell them. Also, those breeders within that circle, and that goes for me, we don't sell anything if it's not right. So if I've got an issue with mites or with an RI, then I would simply not sell any animals and make people aware, look, I've got an issue, I'm not sending out no animals. But there are breeders out there who will send out animals with issues, whether that be mites, RI, or they may not even know they've got an issue, okay? That's just being straight, talking with you guys and being honest. As you can see behind me, everything is upside down at the moment because I'm in transition between moving the stuff from this HQ to the new HQ. So everything's all a bit up in the air, and I was setting up the quarantine rack and I thought, you know what, this is a perfect opportunity to do a video to cover the topic. Let's talk about quarantining animals, the way I quarantine my animals. There is multiple ways of doing it. Some people quarantine for 1 month, some people quarantine for 3 months, some people quarantine for 6 months. It's entirely up to you. There is no rule book on how to quarantine animals. It's only learned, let's say, it's only learned through mistakes, or it's only learned through other people's mistakes. So for example, I've had people quarantine animals for a month. They've messaged me going, Gav, I've quarantined this animal from this breeder. I've put it in my collection and all of a sudden it's got a problem. I've asked for the quarantine period and they've said a month. I've had other people say I've quarantined animals for 6 months. They've put it into their collection and there's an issue. So we're going to discuss why time frame is important, but also what is important is the transition from quarantine into your own collection, and the same from the transition from the selling breeder to yourself, which is the buying breeder. Okay, so first things first, this is how I do it. I quarantine for a month. I then go on a week by week base. Okay, so in other words, I take it week by week after that month. I've always done it this way. I've never had any issues. Okay, so this is why I'm telling you how I do it. If on that week after the month quarantine period everything is okay and it seems to be acting normal, and again, when I say acting, you're paying a particular attention to how it's motoring around its tub. In other words, you know, is it acting the same as normal ball pythons within your collection? Is it doing the same sort of thing? You know, when it's feeding time, is it at the front of the tub? You know, is it seeking its hot end after it's eaten? All that sort of things. So, and what I believe is important as well is getting the animal to eat and then you inspecting its poo. I know it sounds disgusting, but it's something that a lot of people don't look at the stalls of their snakes. Now, a lot of common sense is involved, guys, and I don't want you to watch this video and go, this is what Gavin said and this is how it is. Common sense comes into it. Sometimes snakes can have a runny poo, sometimes they can have a solid poo. It's a bit like us, you know, it is what it is. If we have a curry, pretty much the next morning it's not a pretty sight. Do you get what I'm saying? So it's kind of like you've got to think a bit common sense, if you like, a bit logical. When you're inspecting snakes' stalls or the poo, what you're looking for is any parasite. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. When that new snake comes into your possession, the first thing you do is check it over. Don't worry about if it's hot or cold, and again, transportation is key. So if the longer that snake's in transport, the more it has an opportunity for something to go wrong. So the quicker it can get from A to B, the better. So that's why I use a 24-hour reptile courier, which enables my animal to get from my house to the customer's house within that 24-hour period. To me, that is critical. Okay, some couriers can take longer. That's fine, as long as the animal is being cared for. It's, you know, it is what it is. But for me, I want my animal to get to my customer as soon as possible. So if an animal comes in, it's better for it to be too cold than too warm. So sometimes, you know, I won't overdo with the heat packs. I'll keep them like 1 or 2 heat packs within the UK, just to make sure it stays pretty warm, if you know what I mean. Not too hot, not too cold. So basically, just a good temperature. It's always better if a snake is too cold than too warm. Okay, so that's that. The snake comes in, you're going to check it over, almost like a little MOT. Yeah, you're going to check it over, make sure there's no redness on the belly, there's no sort of nose rub, anything like that. You're going to give it a full check over. You're going to check its weight, and you're going to handle it to see how it's handling. Is it okay? Has it got any issues? At that point, whatever the issues are, you need to note them down, okay? And just tell the breeder straight away, oh, snake's arrived, however, I noticed it's got a bit of nose rub, or I noticed the belly's a bit pink, or it's going into shed. You need to note it all down and let the breeder know. Some breeders will sell you animals with issues that they may not have even known themselves. So sometimes snakes can have a jaw issue, they can have a bit of nose rub. That's standard, guys. It will correct itself pretty much unless it's too far gone. So some breeders, it's always best to let the breeder know, just out of courtesy, like I said, and then what you're going to do, you're going to then introduce, put the snake into a quarantine rack. Now we'll go up to the new HQ and you'll see how I've set up my quarantine rack and how I do things. The one thing I don't do straight away, normally back in the day, when you used to get wild caught animals come in, you used to sort of check them for parasites, etc, etc. But one thing that Ralph Davies taught me was to never treat an animal for parasites, nor sort of internal parasites, until it has had some feeds or it's feeding. The reason for that is because the minute you start messing about with that animal, trying to ram antibiotics down its throat to help clear any gut parasites or stop any potential parasites from developing within the snake, you're going to stress the snake out and it's not going to settle down. So it's always better to let the snake settle in an environment, i.e. in a quarantine rack, and then offer it food and then see how it goes. It's kind of like there's no point treating an animal for a gut parasite if it doesn't have the parasite. So it kind of makes sense, okay? Now, there is some treatments you can do before you put it into the quarantine rack, which isn't as invasive as putting sort of antibiotics down its throat and hoping that it will cure any potential parasite within the gut. What I normally do sometimes depends on how the snake is, how it's acting. And again, this is where your own common sense has to come in and you have to pay particular attention to the snake. I will sort of coat it with a Frontline, which again, I'll go over that in the quarantine video when I show you the rack. I'll show you exactly what's what. So sometimes I will coat it with a bit of Frontline, but other than that, it goes into the quarantine rack and I monitor the snake, okay? Knowing the snake and knowing how these snakes act, let's say, gives you a massive insight into what's right and what's wrong. So in other words, when you look at a snake, you can see, yeah, it's acting normal, yeah? If there's an issue, you can look at it also and go, something's not quite right there. So common sense, paying attention to your animals, as I say all along, always pay attention to your animals, because they will give you, even though they can't talk, they will give you the best information possible. So yeah, it comes in, I basically put it straight into the quarantine rack after giving it a health check, and then I leave it a few days and see how it acts. Now, if it's at the front of the tub during feeding time, whether it be that night, that day, or the week after, I offer it food. If within a week it's not looking interested and coming to the front of the tub for food, I will try a live prey item. And the reason for this is because the animal itself, again, you've got to understand, guys, I'm an established breeder, okay? I'm not new to the hobby. So this is something that, again, it's down on your skill and you need to work out on your set skill level, right? I never sell animals which are live feeders, never. If ever there's an issue with feeding, it's normally down to the tub size. So, and again, we'll look at the quarantine rack, which I'm now going to use my Herp Exotic rack as the quarantine rack because it's fantastic for that sort of thing. It's nice and dark in there. There's different sized, sectioned off. There's sections within the 33 litre tubs. You can put dividers in, which helps section them off and make them smaller. I can also get hides in there. So tub size is important. Making the animal feel secure is key. Because I know how to work with this species, I know if something needs a little bit of helping hand. Hence why giving it a live rodent. Now, I only work with African soft-furred rats, and giving it an African soft-furred rat, nothing big, just small. If it's previously been on rats, it will smash that African soft-furred rat, I guarantee you, especially if it's alive. And the reason for this is because I need to get that snake comfortable and to know that in that tub, it's going to get fed. This is your new home. This is all about feeding, and you're perfectly safe to take that rodent. Now, normally when you offer it frozen thawed, you know, it's a big hand going in with a big pair of tweezers and offering, you know, dangling a rodent in front of it. It can scare the animal sometimes. So by putting in a little live, shutting the tub, coming away, and again, doing this at night, because remember, they are nocturnal, will make the snake feel a bit more confident and a bit more secure. Now, I understand not everyone has access to live, and I understand not everyone is into this sort of thing. However, I am a reptile breeder, I am a reptile keeper. First and foremost, the health of those animals come first. I need to get that snake feeding within quarantine period, within a set time, because I want to see its stool. I need to examine its poo. Sounds disgusting, I know, but it's something that needs to be done. And again, within the quarantine tub, I use paper, unprinted, plain takeaway paper. Okay, perfect for seeing if there's any mites on the snake dropping off onto the paper, and it's also perfect to inspect their stool for any parasites. If there is any parasites within the stools, again, don't worry about if it's loose or if it's solid. The solider the better, obviously, but what you're looking for is you're looking for any worm type parasites within the stool. If there is, you need to capture it on your camera or film it, on your phone, or take a picture of it and get in touch with your local exotic vet. They may be able to, they may ask you to take the sample into them so they can put it under the microscope and give you the correct antibiotics to treat that animal. Okay, now this is all being sensible and being, what's the word I'm looking for, responsible. As a responsible keeper and breeder, when you go from switching from rats to Maltese, it may give a little stomach upset because the snake has been fed on rats as opposed to Maltese. Within a short period of time, that will change, and the poos and the stools will be solid literally after its second poo. It's disgusting, I know, but it's fact. And then you'll start to see a reduction in the stool size because the snake will take more from the Maltese or more from the African soft-furred rat than it will a normal domestic fancy rat. As I say, steak for your snakes. Okay, vegan steak. So I think I've pretty much covered it all. The water, obviously the water side of things, I use a ceramic bowl. I put a plastic deli cup in there and just normal water. If you want to treat it with some, there's the little droplets you can buy for your fish tank, which you can put in and just helps get away any chemicals. If you want to do that, that's fine. A little drop of the, I forget what it's called now. It's it takes out the chemicals basically, or it helps reduce the chemicals within the water. It's good stuff. You can use it if you want. It won't affect the snakes, but my advice would be to keep it simple, so if there is any issues, you can identify them straight away. And the reason why I sort of quarantine for a month is because the mite cycle, if you like, is within that month period. So let's say that snake you've got coming into your collection has got mites. Within that month, you will see that that snake has mites. Fact. What I'm looking for after that is I'm looking for, again, like I said, the stool. I'm making sure that the stools are solid or they are within good health, as in, we've got urates, we've got the brown bits, we got wee. I know it's disgusting, guys, but this is all for the health of the animal, okay? And checking stuff like that, and then I go by week basis. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll wait till it's had its first shed cycle, because normally after it's shed it normally poos as well. So you're feeding it, you've kept it for a month in the quarantine, you're now looking for that shed cycle and that poo cycle, if you like. After that, it's entirely up to you if you introduce it into your own collection or if you want to keep it within quarantine for another few months. I have known people have no issues with a snake. It's been in quarantine and then they've put it into their own collection and now it's got an issue. And that can sometimes come from stress. So what you need to do is kind of mirror image as such the conditions within your quarantine rack to your own collection. So it's not a massive change. So in other words, you're not going from like a small tub, let's say something like this. So you're not going from something like a V15, okay, which is like that, to something like this size tub. And this is an ARS tub, and these work awesome, and these work awesome. So you want to try and keep the stress level of the ball python down as much as possible. Stress is key with these animals. If they get stressed out, their immune system drops, hence you'll start to have problems, lack of feeding, dehydration, and they can then start to get an RI. So stress level, keeping the stress levels down is vital. That's why whenever a snake is in quarantine, I'll try not to handle it when it's after I've done its pre-inspection, it's gone into the tub. I try not to handle it very much. I open the tub, I see and I look and I observe, but other than that, I'll leave it alone, I'll wait till it's feeding, wait till it's shed out and it's pooing all okay, then I'll get the snake out and handle it and see how it's reacting, okay? So, let's get up to the new HQ, let's have a look at the rack. I think I've covered everything. If I haven't, please feel free to put a comment in the comment box below. If you have any questions, I will try and answer them. However, all you've got to do a lot of the times, guys, is just look at your own collection, look at your own environment, and come up with a common sense answer, okay? Common sense needs to prevail within this sort of thing because everyone's collection is different. Everyone does different things in different ways and this, that and the other. Some ways that people do isn't worth it because it's kind of like, really? Crazy. And one more piece of advice which I'll give you guys, which has come from a story. I don't know if it's true, but we're going to take a learning curve from this. A breeder went to go and pick up a snake from another breeder. He got there, he checked it over, and the breeder said, my collection has RI, however, I'm going to give you your snake that you've purchased and a bottle of antibiotics and some needles to inject the animal with the antibiotics. For me, I appreciate that breeder being honest, but for me as a person, as someone who's buying an animal, whether I went to the States, Europe, or 10 minutes up the road to buy that animal, I would go, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. I'll have my money back. If my animal is okay, I will then give you the money back and I will take the snake. There is no way I would leave another breeder's house with that snake and said bottle of antibiotics. There's no way. No way. Because it's on me. Okay, I appreciate that breeder for being honest, but you have to be honest back and go, thanks, but no thanks. I do want the snake. If that animal is okay within a month or two's time, then I will continue to purchase it. But I'm not going to take the snake and a bottle of antibiotics. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know. I can just tell you because I've heard the story a few times here in the UK. So I want you guys to take from that a bit of common sense, you know, and this is where I say common sense must prevail. You must use your common sense. Don't be afraid to say no. Don't be afraid to walk away. It's your collection, okay? It's your hard-earned money. If you're not going to run that risk, just say no and walk away. Don't feel embarrassed. Don't feel any way particular, but just say no, walk away. It's better to do that and to have an issue your end, and there is no way I would give an animal an injection of an antibiotic unless it was prescribed from the vets. Okay, so anyway, let's get up to the new HQ and let's have a look at the rack. Come on. So here we are in the new HQ, and where I've set up my Herp Exotic rack is in a different room from the actual breeding room. When you're setting up a quarantine rack, it really needs to be in a different room. Now, a lot of people tend to think a quarantine rack is a quarantine rack and it's separate from other racks, and it doesn't need to be separated from the actual breeding room or from your reptile room, but it does. Okay, it's better to be safe than sorry, and I've always had a separate rack in a separate room, and it's always worked for me. So here's some tubs I prepared earlier. So what we have in the tubs, we have the tubs have been disinfected, and also I use kind of a disinfectant and a bleach mix, obviously with water. It's up to you what you guys do or how you do it. I'm not going to tell you how to do it because, well, let's put it like this, common sense needs to prevail, and some people, yeah. Anyway, so I disinfect the tubs. All the rack has been disinfected, and I do that every time new animals come in. So I haven't been using the Herp Exotic rack for quarantine in this instance, other than now. I love my Herp Exotic racks. I rate them. If you've got a rack, or if you've got a few snakes in a room, in a bedroom, in a living room, in a kitchen, anywhere like that, these racks work perfect. So it makes common sense that as a quarantine rack, it's also going to work very well. The sides and the back is encased, and the stats are set up so it enables me to give a very strong heat source to the rear of the tub. Now, when an animal has an RI, sometimes a lot of people say it's best to have a higher heat. So in other words, the hot spot needs to be round about 92. Again, with the Herb Exotics, because they do run hot, it's perfect for that sort of thing. So if you have got animals coming in and they have got a bit of an RI, this is going to help with the recovery process. Right, so all we have in here is a ceramic bowl like so. Okay, I put plastic deli cups in there. We've got unprinted paper, so you guys know I'm a massive fan of chip shop paper, so I still keep that just in case. So I use that in all my quarantine tubs. We're going to talk about two products very quickly. So one is Adapt. Okay, it is a pesticide and it will harm your snakes if you are not careful. You need to use it with caution, and what I need to get across is there's a lot of products out there in aerosols which are not designed to be sprayed directly onto an animal. Adapt is designed to be sprayed in the air. Anything flying through the pesticide particles will obviously kill it straight away, and it's really good for killing wasps, trust me. So it's very potent stuff, and it's good for mites and ticks and all that sort of stuff. However, like I said, you cannot spray it directly onto the animal. So I hear you say, what do I use this for? Well, basically I use this for spraying in between the tubs. So for example, if I just lie that down, when the tubs are all shut like so, all I do, take that and just spray like in between each rack, basically up and down, before the snakes come into the quarantine. The other thing I do is I take the water bottle out and I spray this. I spray within the tub. I dose it, then I shut the tub. I leave that for about 10-15 minutes. I let the Adapt basically sort of coat all the inside. It's not going to hurt the snake by using that amount, okay? Obviously, don't do it when the water supply's in there. Obviously, I'm going to be putting a plastic deli cup in there with water, so I'm not going to worry about that. But what that's actually doing now is it's sort of coating and leaving a film within the tub and on the ceiling. So if any mites do get off and they do have a crawl around, then they're going to come across the pesticide and hopefully die. Right, so once you've sprayed it after 10 minutes, as you can see, I'm not sure if the camera's picking it up, but I can see the sort of the Adapt coming out. Let it air for about another 10 minutes. So that's how I use the Adapt solution, and that's one that I do recommend. It's not cheap, you can find it on Amazon. That is a 750ml bottle. Okay, the next product I really rate is Frontline. Now, as you can see, this is designed for cats and dogs. I've done how to treat mites with this stuff. This is an invasive method. There is non-invasive methods, and I strongly recommend you don't use predator mites, okay? My experience with predator mites and other people's have come to the same conclusion: it's a waste of time. If you want to kill mites within days, as in 2 days, Frontline is the key. And Frontline is actually the only product on the market designed for spraying directly onto your animal. Going over this very quickly, all I do, I spray it on some paper towel, and then I let the snake run through the paper towel. Obviously it also coats the snake. I then take that paper towel and throw it immediately in the bin outside. It is very strong. It won't hurt if you get it around the face or the nose and the mouth area. it's going to leave a bit of a nasty taste if they get it in their mouth, but other than that, it's not enough to poison them, so don't stress. And that's the other product I use after I know they're feeding. And the reason why I don't do this before, well, I suppose you could do it before you put the snake in your quarantine if you really wanted to. But the reason why I don't do it before normally is because I want that animal to settle in. If I start treating it for parasites and mites, it's going to stress the animal out even more. So you have got to pay attention to your animals, and this is where again common sense comes in. Some animals you can see by how they're acting that they're going to be okay. They're not shy, they're not defensive, so pretty much you can treat them and they're going to feed that night or the next night. Don't worry about treating them. If you don't treat the snake straight away and you put the snake in there, because you've got the Adapt product already in and around the area that's coated the area, that's going to help with containing the mites within there. I want to stress, this is how I do it. This isn't the only way. There are multiple ways of doing stuff, guys, but I look at things idiot proof, easy and cost effective. It's simple. It's just how I do things. It is what it is. So the temperatures within the tubs, I like to run around about 90 to 92 on the hot spot. They've got a hide if they need a hide. Fortunately, with this Herp Exotic rack, it comes, or you can get the dividers for these 33 litre tubs. So what's ideal about the 33 litre tubs is you can actually half them, so it can cater for big snakes as well as small snakes and medium snakes. So I really do like the Herp Exotic 33 litre. Plus it's plastic. It's not melamine. Melamine warps. I've had melamine. I love my old melamine racks. They served me so well over the years, but it is prone for warping. The plastics, I find, you don't have any issues as such. But again, like I say, guys, ventilation is key. I've vented all my tubs around the side. I'm not sure if you can see them all around here. I just use a soldering iron and just made some holes. That's worked for me. I've had this rack in operation. It's been fully cleaned and it's now in the new HQ in a separate room from the breeding room and from the hatchling room. So anything that comes in is going to be treated pretty much as soon as it goes in there. Everything, when you're feeding the animal, you don't use the same tweezers or the same equipment for feeding these animals as you would do your collection. So it keeps it all sterile and basically separate. The other thing I do is the minute I've finished feeding the snakes with the equipment from the new snakes coming in, they go straight in to be disinfected with boiling hot water and a disinfectant. In a nutshell, setting up your quarantine rack needs to be as simple as possible. The white paper is there for you to see any issues, any mites that come through and land, you're going to see and you're going to be able to deal with that snake. I don't think there's anything else. I think I've pretty much covered everything. Again, guys, if you have any questions and you want to know anything, if I've missed anything out, if there's anything you're curious about, please feel free to put it down in the comment box below. But I hope this gives you an insight and a bit more information on how I treat incoming animals from a collection I don't know and a collection I'm not sure about. Always quarantine, guys. Like I said, I've got some close friends who I don't quarantine, but I still check the animals over. I still make sure they are healthy and okay. If they're not, they go into quarantine. It's simple. Other than that, I think I've covered everything. If I haven't, please ask a question in the comment box below. But for now, guys, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for all your support. Remember, guys, if you could hit that notification bell and that subscribe button, it's truly awesome. And again, guys, hope you're all well. Take care, stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
I hit recorded, drop, you can't ignore it. I'm transforming.